Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of MMA and Coffee. On this episode, it's a special episode. It's the first time ever. I'm going to try to record from my phone and see how that goes. I hope y'all had a great Christmas, New Year's. I've got a new phone, so I'm going to try that and see how it goes. All right, so for this episode, it's a recap of UFC 219. It was a pretty good card. I'm basically just going to go down the main card, each fight, give you my thoughts on it, and yeah, in the comments below, y'all can tell me what you thought about the fights as well. All right, so the first fight I want to talk about is Carlos Condit against Neil Magny. This fight was, it was an interesting fight. If you really think about this fight, Magny winning shouldn't be a surprise. Carlos Condit had been out for 16 months. He looked rusty. During that 16 months, he wasn't just training. You could tell he looked off. The first two rounds, a lot of his strikes weren't landing. And I think, styles make fights. I think Magny, he's tall, he's lanky. He was outside fighting Condit. Normally, people chase Condit, and Condit gets to backpedal. In this fight, he was having to chase Magny, and really the tell of the fight was the layoff, but also wrestling. If you look at any fight that Condit has lost, it's always been to wrestling. I think the fight was close on the feet, but what cemented the rounds for Magny was the takedowns. And so I watched some interviews before the fight. Condit was saying that he'd been working on his jiu-jitsu, but in my opinion, I think he really needs to work on his wrestling. Because if he could keep the fight on the feet, then he has the best chance of winning. So, to me, he needs to work on his takedown defense. His wrestling is his biggest weakness. So that's my thoughts on the fight. Wasn't surprised Magny won when you really think about it, how active he is. I mean, he does 3 or 4 fights a year, and he's still getting better, whereas Condit, I think he's kind of plateaued maybe. So my advice he almost needs to go somewhere else and work on the holes in his game, which is wrestling, because when you've been fighting that long, eventually people figure out how to beat you and how to game plan for you. So unless you evolve, you're going to start losing the same way every time. All right, so the next fight is the Cynthia Calvillo against Carla Esparza. I actually didn't make a prediction video. I wish I did, because if I did, I felt like this fight would have stayed on the feet, even though they both have grappling. I feel like Carla's wrestling would have kept it on the feet. With that being said, I thought Cynthia had a huge advantage with the jiu-jitsu, and in the first round, she dominated. She dominated Carla in the grappling, on the ground, in the positions. She had all the dominant positions. And then in the second round, she got content with just standing with Carla. And this is the one thing I would say about Cynthia. I think she's very talented. She's still young. And the one thing I've noticed in her fights is a lot of times she's content with standing with girls when that's not really what she's best at. That's not the advantage she has in the fight. Her biggest advantage is jiu-jitsu. And when she takes girls down, she dominates. And so if I'm her corner after the second round, it's 1-1. I'm telling her, look, you were dominant on the ground. Take her down. But she didn't do that. She stood with Carla. And I think the main difference with the stand-up was she was throwing 1 to 2 strikes, and Carla would throw combinations. She would throw 3. And so Carla won on the points for the second and third round. I think it'll be a big learning experience for her. But yeah, the biggest critique with Cynthia is she gets content with standing and slugging it out with people, and that's not really what she's good at. She needs to stick to the grappling, because that's where, in my opinion, she could beat anyone in that division. Her jiu-jitsu is that good. All right, so the next fight, it was Hooker against Duquesne. This was this was more of a strategic fight. Hooker didn't want to just get caught by Takeshi's speed and potential knockout power, so he played it safe. And it wasn't until the third round he kind of opened up, and then he caught him with a submission. Not really much I could say about this fight, to be honest with you. The one thing I could say is maybe Takeshi needs to work on his grappling submission, because this is the second time he's lost to, the fight previously, the guy grappled him, and that's how he lost. In this fight, he went for a bad takedown and got choked out. I guess the only critique I would say is when he went in for the takedown, he put his head under Hooker's arm. And what you would want to do, instead of put your head under, you want to put your head into the torso and your head facing on the inside. So let me kind of stand up. So when he went in for the takedown, his head was facing this way, and Hooker was able to get the choke. Whereas if he went in for the takedown and his head was here facing this way, he couldn't get the choke because his neck is not exposed as much. His shoulder and his head's going to be facing this way. You couldn't really get the choke. But with his head this way and under the armpit, he got the choke easy. So just a small technical mistake that he made, and it cost him the fight. I don't know if he would have won the fight. I think he was down on the cards. But yeah, for me, he needs to work on his grappling, because that's twice now that he's lost that way. All right, so the next fight was Khabib against Barbosa. I was excited about this fight just because of, I don't know, it's just when, the styles. It's the grappler against the striker. The takeaways from this fight, I feel like any fighter in the lightweight division, if they're fighting Khabib in a 3-round fight, they're not going to win. You're not going to win in a 3-round fight because he's going to take you down the first 2 rounds. First 2 rounds, he's going to get you down. So then it becomes a game plan of nutrition and cardio and efficiency. If you watch the fight, Barbosa, when it was standing, he was going for broke, trying to knock him out. And the problem with this is, if he did knock him out, now he's too tired to defend the takedowns. So it's interesting. When someone's undefeated, everyone wants to try to figure out how to beat them. I think the way to beat Khabib is in a 5-round fight. You have to be very efficient with your energy and weather the storm. I think after, the first 2 rounds, if you watch, Barbosa did hit a second win in the 3rd round. The 3rd round, he looked not as overwhelmed, not as tired. Now, don't get me wrong, he still was tired, but if you watch the fight, he was able to stuff a couple takedowns. And if you look, Khabib was starting to slow down as well. That's why, in my opinion, a fight with Tony Ferguson is super interesting, just because Ferguson's known for his cardio and he's known for his just non-stop pace. So to me, that's going to be a battle of nutrition. Who can, break the other with their conditioning. But yeah, as far as game planning, Khabib, he's going to get at least the first 2 rounds, he's going to take you down. So then it becomes being conservative with your energy. So if, not using all of your energy on your strikes trying to knock him out. Also, let's say, one thing I noticed too is a lot of fighters, they're not good at controlling the posture of Khabib. Khabib is able to posture up. If you notice, at no point did Barbosa control the back of his neck to keep his posture down. He was able to posture up, and that's why he was able to land so many strikes on the ground. And then another thing is Barbosa's stance. His stance is very narrow. If you looked at his stance, it was extremely narrow. and because of that, he couldn't keep the distance from Habib. Uh, for for me, I would say you'd almost have to have a wide stance. You'd have to kind of like Connor, a wide karate stance, or look at Wonderboy, how he controls distance with his wide stance and stays away from opponents. You have to outside fight Habib. Um, Good things I saw from Barbosa was the inside leg kick. Inside leg kick looked great. That was one thing that I saw that worked, but he wasn't able to stick with it, and he was wasting a lot of energy with his punches and the wheel kicks. If you've ever thrown a wheel kick, it uses a lot of energy, and as soon as he threw the wheel kick, then he's having to defend the takedown, and he's too tired to stuff it, so he gets taken down. So a lot of this has to do with energy, being efficient, and being smart, and weathering the storm. I believe if in a 5 round fight, if someone has the cardio now, this is a big if you have the cardio to to weather the storm of Habib with his grappling, I believe in fourth, fifth round, that's when it gets like really interesting. If you have more energy than him, if you were smart about it, I think that's when he's vulnerable to getting finished. Now, big question is, are you going to be exhausted by the pace he puts on? Most likely, yes. So I know it sounds like a small window, but that's what I see when I'm watching the fight. That in the beginning he's pretty much unstoppable. I don't think trying to just catch him with one punch is smart as far as game plans, because now you're just saying, oh, I'm putting everything into one thing, and if it doesn't work, I have no backup plan. I think you should have multiple plans. I think you should have A, B, C, D for every situation. So, yeah, inside leg kick was great. Maybe punches to the body. If you look at someone like Gus, how he fights wrestlers, sometimes he turns around and runs. Now, I'm not for that. I don't like when he does that. I think a lot of times when he does that, someone could still catch him. But you almost have to fight like that against Habib. You have to slow down the fight. You have to control the distance. And you can't have a narrow stance. With that narrow stance of Barbosa with his legs so close, he's not able to, cover distance quick enough to stay away. It's very interesting. I thought the fight was pretty much went how it should have went, especially in a 3 round fight. Anyone that's going to fight Habib, they need to ask for a 5 round fight, because that's your best bet of beating him. So matches to make after that. I assume that it should be him and Tony unify the belt. Connor needs to vacate. This is ridiculous. I'm getting tired of the media saying we don't know what's going to happen. Meanwhile, you had GSP vacate not even a month after he won and freed up the division. Meanwhile, Connor's kind of holding it under hostage, really for no reason. I mean, people can say money all they want or whatever. To me, it doesn't matter who his opponent is. He is the money fight. And the right thing would have been is as soon as Tony won, that they announced the Conor Ferguson fight to unify the belts, and then the winner of that would have fought Khabib, but that hasn't happened. It's been all delayed because of Conor, and as a fan, I'm frustrated, and so I'm kind of like, the division needs to move on, similar to what happened in the featherweight. If either he's going to fight, and if not, then they need to strip him. Enough's enough. I don't know what's going to happen, but that's the situation. What should have happened was Tony and Conor should have fought or already be scheduled to fight. It's not happening. And at this point, let Tony and Khabib fight. They were supposed to fight like 3 times. Khabib's fixed his weight cut, supposedly. Let's hope so. If he can make weight, that's the fight to make. Those are the 2 top lightweight fighters active. And yeah, that's what I thought about that fight. All right, moving on to the main event, Holly Holm against Chris Cyborg. This fight was interesting. Wasn't too sure what would happen. Now I did know what each fighter had. I thought Holly was going to counterfight. I thought she was going to backpedal, run, and counterfight. She didn't do that. She was actually initiating a lot of the strikes and sequences. Honestly, my biggest takeaway from this is Holly doesn't have that many weapons. I'm actually pretty amazed at how little weapons she has. She has her overhand left. She has a right hook and a head kick. Those were the three moves she did the entire fight, and that was it. And I thought the first two rounds were close. The fight metrics said Cyborg won all the rounds. When I was watching it live, I thought Holly had won the first two, but then Cyborg had won the last three. Simply because in the beginning she was getting hit by Holly's left, but eventually she adapted. She was patient. She waited, and she started countering the left with her overhand right, and then she was countering Holly's right hook with her right. And really, I mean, Cyborg didn't throw that much either. She had a jab, overhand right counter, and she would throw either a leg kick or a head kick. Biggest takeaway from this fight was Holly should have been more patient. She should have counter fought Cyborg, and body kicks, man. That was the whole time I was watching the fight. It was very frustrating to watch how she threw maybe one body kick in the fifth round. She threw several head kicks, but Cyborg was expecting that. Cyborg had her right hand up to defend the left head kick. And so I was just disappointed in the fact that Holly's game plan wasn't that great. I thought, if anything, she should have been throwing left body kicks every round, a lot of them, slow Cyborg down with those body shots. And then, maybe by the fourth, fifth round, her right hand would come down, and then she could throw the left head kick and catch her with it. But she wasn't going to catch her with it if she wasn't tired and she still had her hands up. So, yeah, I wasn't very sure what Holly's game plan was against Cyborg. And also, I'm not impressed with Holly's depth as a fighter as far as moves. Like, she did the same stuff. She never changed within the fight. We at least watched Cyborg adapt. She stopped getting hit by the left punch once she seen like, oh, okay, this is what she's throwing to me, and she adapted and she changed. Holly did the same moves for 25 minutes, and so very frustrating to watch. At the same time, though, what matchup are we going to make for Cyborg? That was the closest anyone's ever had a fight with her. And I think a lot of it is because she actually went against someone close to her size, not as big, but someone who is a fighter, not these, no disrespect, but a lot of Cyborg's opponents been, soccer moms. They're not real fighters, not on the same level. I mean, most of them don't even know how to take a hit. When they get hit, they turn away. No game plans. I mean, it's very frustrating. Only thing, other than the body kick, I just thought of it. Holly did really well in the clinch. I was surprised at how well she did in the clinch. Just as one adjustment could have changed the fight. She would clinch her, mostly to take a breather, I would assume. But, end of round, 1 minute, you're in the clinch, take her down, steal the round. I think that would have been really the defining moment if she dedicated body kicks to set up the high kick in the later rounds. And if she just got takedowns, even if it was at the last minute of each round, it makes the fight a lot closer to score, not so one-sided. I think she could have stole it just by making slight adjustments, just decision making. That's what it boiled down to. But she didn't. She did the same moves she always does. So honestly, I don't know what the future is for Holly. I think she's kind of fought all the big names she could fight, other than Nunes. There's no one else she hasn't fought. And, she said she didn't want to be known just for the Ronda fight. I don't think she will. I mean, of course, that's her highlight moment of her career. But for me, at this point, I think she needs to evolve, similar to Condit with the wrestling. If she had a couple takedowns, it's a completely different fight. Completely different fight. Especially when you've seen that, she had some, physical advantages in the clinch. No one else has done that to Cyborg. I think, she did have some moments. Just the fact that she went the distance with her, you could say is like a moral victory. But I'm not very sure what the future is for her. And the same thing with Cyborg. Cyborg has to fight, Megan Anderson, who's not even in the UFC. But at least Megan Anderson is natural to that weight class. Honestly, I think similar fight would happen with Megan Anderson. I don't even think Megan Anderson would do what Holly did in the clinch. And I don't know if she can take a punch like Holly. That's the one thing I could say is when Holly got hit, she was good at staying in her stance, keeping her eyes on the target, and poker facing. Poker facing. She was good at poker facing. And, if a punch did hurt her, she didn't show it. She's tough. Like I said, probably moral victory, but man, very frustrating to watch because there was a lot of stuff that she could have done that she just chose not to do. Instead, she did the same stuff over and over. And some of it is, I don't even think it's a lack of skill. I think a lot of it is just knowledge, decision making. Maybe, it's different when you're in there. You're just kind of autopilot. You're not thinking. But, those decision makings cost her the fight. Not going for a takedown, not going for the body, or not looking to counter. Instead, she was engaging and getting countered. Actually, that's how she lost to Valentina. Valentina fought her. She waited on that left, and she would counter not with one, but multiple strikes, combinations, and then she lost on the card. So, very interesting. For the most part, this card wasn't too bad. And I've seen some people complaining. A lot of this is styles make fights. A lot of these fights were either, in the Khabib case, it was one-sided, but the other ones, I think they kind of neutralized each other, canceled the other out as far as styles. Anyways, that's what I thought about this event. That's what I thought about the fights. What did you think? Let me know in the comments below. Also, what do you think about this format as far as me just recording on the phone? Because I'm thinking about doing it live. This is first take. I'm just recording on the phone and I'm going to post it. But I'm thinking about right after the event, going live, talking to all y'all and seeing what y'all thought about the fights. Anyways, let me know in the comments below. Subscribe, all that good stuff. See y'all next time.